I've always liked stink bugs. I found their silly walk, goofy faces, and aloof demeanors endearing. That was until I didn't. All stink bugs portrayed are paid actors. No stink bugs were harmed in the making of this video. The heck? Oh, come on. While I've done my best to simply coexist with them, they're just getting out of hand anymore, and their diabolical scheme to invade my home each and every winter by the thousands to harass me won't cease. There are so many that even Tony tries to help. I caught him munching on one while roaming the office, and apparently he liked it because now he's always on the hunt. However, I don't want him eating the stinky things because apparently they can make Beardy sick. Sorry buddy, I know you just want to help, but I can't have you eating these. They've left me with no choice but to take drastic and immediate revenge against their entire species in the best way possible, with kindness. Allow me to explain. Stink bugs, particularly brown marmorated stink bugs like the ones in my house, are invasive. They originally came from Asia as stowaways on shipping crates, and naturally they were first documented as invaders in my home state of Pennsylvania. From here, they've spread to many other states as they wreak havoc on agriculture and invade our homes in the colder months. Until I can locate and see all the gaps where they're entering, or a viable solution for the bugs at large is found, they'll keep intruding. That's when I thought to myself, if I can't beat them, why not join them? Listen here, sir, you can stay, but only under my terms. You and all your stinky friends have to remain in an enclosure permanently. No more free roaming the house or being a menace outside. Sound good? Jackson here reluctantly agreed. Getting started was easy because a tank recently became available, which ironically enough housed a completely different intruder, Toby, the fishing spider. She wanted to live in my bathroom, but instead I moved her to a Paludarium. Unfortunately, they only live for around 2 years, one of which she spent with me. However, now that she's gone, it only seems fitting that this old tank would become home to a different invader, don't you think? As you'd probably expect, I had to make adjustments before I could begin. The pump vault was no longer needed, but after I removed it, there was a hole in the screen. That's not ideal, especially since the goal is to keep the stink bugs isolated from the rest of my home. Fortunately, fixing the issue was simple. I just had to replace the screen. While the compressed cork panels I used for the background held up well, I had to mend the gap where the pump was. I also wanted to enhance its definition and added more pieces. Since I was really going through the trouble to create a vivarium for stink bugs, I figured I might as well try to make something truly unique. An idea that kept coming back to me was a treetop sanctuary. Imagine something meant to mimic the branches up in a tree. I thought it was a cool concept worth exploring to get inspiration for arboreal species of all kinds. When I considered how to create an authentic looking cluster of branches, I knew variation would be my best tool. More specifically, the trunk would need to be thick, with all the other branches being thinner. Of course, most of them didn't fit, but that's alright. Nothing a saw couldn't handle. Now when I got into this, I didn't really expect it to be very challenging at all. However, I had to experiment with the placement quite a bit. First I put it on the right, then in the middle. Neither looked correct. As I continued adding branches, it eventually came together and ended up somewhere in between. I liked the progress of it all and felt that it truly did appear like what I gained inspiration from, but none of it was stable. That had to change. I stapled them to the screen to secure the top and applied foam to the bottom. Although I knew this idea had potential when I began, seeing it together gave me even more inspiration. That said, I knew the details were about to take it to the next level. Trees often have debarked limbs, so adding driftwood to the design felt like a natural choice. I also wanted to make this hole look more authentic. I removed a lot of the foam and replaced it with other materials. I was really excited to use this dried plate fungi as well because I've had it for nearly a decade, saving it for the perfect project, and this was it. I knew that having a lot of foliage around the branches would be essential to mimic the appearance of leaves on tree limbs. Pothos was a great option for this because it was easy to manipulate the vines around the desired look. I should probably also mention that I added these before anything else to avoid issues with the bottom layers. I didn't want to overcomplicate anything with that either. I kept it simple and just put down a layer of leca first. This would retain moisture for the plants in a water reservoir while simultaneously preventing the soil from becoming stagnant. However, none of that would work without a barrier, and it doesn't get much simpler than a layer of sphagnum moss. And last but certainly not least, I built a layer of substrate above this. Together it looked incredible, but I was still just getting started. These little twigs put further emphasis on the need for variation, and while small, they were likely one of the most important items. Now keep in mind that this was meant to appear like it's high up in the trees, and to accurately portray that, the substrate had to be hidden completely with plants. Of course, as I did that, I stuck with my general rule of using plants of different sizes and shapes to create a dynamic look. I included botanicals too, but I used them much differently than usual and glued them to the branches. I'm really pleased with how this Vivarium turned out, and I think it does an awesome job mimicking that look I was going for. All that's left to do now is get some stinkers. Although there are a lot of stink bugs in my house, they mostly stick to the living room and my office. I know they live in this plant because Tony is always drawn to it, so I decided to look there first. Initially I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Once I realized how many there were, I immediately started rounding them up, but I lost count. Seeing so many simultaneously gave promise that I might be able to get them out of my living space, while also making me realize these efforts might be futile. I'm sure I'll find out, but for now I was curious to see what they'd do in here. Within seconds, they began pouring out into the vivarium. They must have felt stinky because I could sure smell them, and rather than explore, they were more concerned with cleaning themselves off. I appreciate that because I don't want this corner of the animal room to just stink from now on. As annoyed as I've been with them in my house, I'll admit that it was enjoyable to see them in an environment where they were free to do their thing. Watching them mosey across branches and explore reminded me how I found them endearing. I still don't want them in my house though. I'm even more amazed at how these bugs survive in nature. Many couldn't even figure out how to exit the container and needed encouragement. I was curious if they'd accept some blueberries. It seemed promising at first because they were very active after I put them in. This one even got a closer look, but I don't think he liked it because the others remained untouched for the entire night. They instead took this time to settle in, which was interesting to observe the next day. I was relieved to see how much of the environment they would use because I half expected them to all cling to the screen. I wanted to find something they'd eat though. I know they eat berries and fruit, but maybe these weren't fragrant enough, so I tried a jelly pot instead. This one must have found it enticing because it showed up immediately. It surprised me though because it cleaned itself for several minutes before taking a sip. I was anticipating a swarm, but life is often less exciting than our imagination. I think the reason that didn't happen is for the same reason these bugs come indoors, which is to slow down until warmer temperatures emerge. Their calm behavior in this vivarium is reflective of that. I do find it ironic though how rambunctious they are when free roaming my house. My office was pretty quiet afterward. It was a relief, but I doubt I'll ever get them all. Although I still find them irritating, getting more hands-on and observing them in this environment has rekindled my appreciation for them. If you want to see more invertebrate content, I've linked up the fishing spider Paludarium and a fun update about my vampire crabs. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to help support my content if you haven't already, and until next time Serpa Squad, take care and peace.